Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast, where we interview growers from all over the world, both beginners and experts, seeking to learn more about what they know about gardening and how they do things in their garden. What's up, everybody? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 168. In this episode, I interview Francesco Sasso. He has been gardening for 15 years and works for Dutch Passion. He gets deep into genetics here, with a focus on talking about some of the best outdoor genetics. We also get a little bit into how he grows his plants outdoors. If you want to see short clips of these podcast episodes, search Garden Talk Clips on YouTube. I also have a gardening channel where I show the plants that I grow. Both of those channels will be linked down in the YouTube description section below. One of my goals for this podcast is to bring free information about gardening to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who helped make that goal possible. Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. Check out their Cultivator Kit, which is a complete grow tent kit that features integrated AI controls with precision equipment, Athena simplified fertilizers, and a voucher for Jungle Boy's genetics. There's more to it, so click the link in the description section below so you can learn more about their Cultivator Kit, and the discount code MrGrowIt15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com. Stash Blend. Several additives in one blend, so you no longer have to buy individual bottles. Check it out at stashblend.com, link in the description section below, and use the discount code THESTASH. And we are back, and I'm joined with Francesco Sasso from Dutch Passion. How you doing today?
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much to invite us to your podcast. We follow you.
Thanks for coming on. This should be an exciting one today. Today we're going to talk about some of the best outdoor genetics. Let's get into some that can give big harvests, consistent yields, and high quality. We also may get into some tips for growing them outdoors. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gardening?
Yeah, I'm from Italy. I work for the company for Dutch Passion from 10 years already, and I started growing when I was more or less 16. So I started quite early because there, where I born, when I grown up, was difficult to find good products around, to consume. So I come from a small village close to the mountains in the north of Italy. So what we did is that we start collecting seeds, the first seeds that were sold by resellers in Italy from Amsterdam, where the seeds. So actually, my first plants, my first seeds that I bought were Dutch Passion. Then years later, I started working with the company. And we were growing guerrillas. So we were growing in the mountains, up to the mountains, outdoor. And from that on, I started to be really passionate on growing because you never forget your first harvest, and your first plant, and then you get really, really enthusiastic to the crop, to the plant, And that's where everything started for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so exciting.
Exactly. And when you see the size,
the way it grows, when the flowers get on there, it's incredible. Even to this day, I still get excited growing out different genetics because there's a variety in these genetics, and some grow better in some areas than other areas, which we're going to get into here in a minute. So overall, your grow style, are you 100% outdoors, or do you do some indoor growing as well?
No, I started as an outdoor grower, for necessity, let's say, and I keep. For me, it's quite romantic, to grow outdoor, to see the plants with the wind, outside, kissed by the sun, and also growing like with a huge size, you can really reach a big yielding outside, growing outdoor. And it's also really clean products. But then I started, to do my experiments indoor. And then I became also really passionate about indoor growing because you can really control well the condition indoor. You can keep mothers, you can keep the genetics, you can start breeding, you can start playing with the genetics. So I still grow both, and more than outdoor, I became like more a greenhouse, glass house grower. I'm both, still mainly growing indoor lately, for necessity, and also because I moved to Netherlands, to Amsterdam, where the company is based. And also here, there is not such a big space to grow outside, and also the climate, the weather, we can see later. why also the varieties are really strong. The outdoor varieties breed in Netherlands. The climate, the weather is not so easy to grow outside in here around.
No, I can only imagine how crazy it can be growing outdoors in that environment. Are you soil or cocoa? And do you grow with organic inputs or synthetic inputs?
Yeah, that's I mostly do cocoa. Like my favorite mix is between 50% light mix soil and 50% cocoa. That's I really like it because I find benefit from both. So I can find really nice development of the roots, fast developments, oxygen from the cocoa, but still the performing wise of the soil. Then I became really a cocoa lover, like if I can say, like in indoor, because also I can control well my irrigation and watering. But yeah, 50% mix. It's my favorite way to grow. I see my plants really healthy, and and I'm more organic growers. I started with more synthetics because I had the feeling that was easier. But actually, then when you start testing and trying, you see also that organic growing it's quite easy and beneficial from my point of view. From my harvest, the quality that I got from organics, it's really like a top notch. Like terpene wise, especially. Yeah.
I know a handful of growers that do just about exactly what you do, where they mix up that soil like that and getting more oxygen down in the root zone and maybe a little bit more area over medium. They can get some really big yields from it. Now,
Yeah.
there's one question I wanted to ask you up front here. Now, I want to get your input on you working for Dutch Passion. I know you have a lot of knowledge in regards to what people are actually striving for. It seems like more growers care less about yield these days and are really focusing more on quality. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's really true. Depends, like also the goal that the grower have. Like there are many commercial grower that sometimes care more on the quantity over the quality. But main, like step by step, the culture and the knowledge about if we see the last 15 years, grown up a lot and really fast, so the smoke, the users, like medical users and not, is looking for quality, like if you do something, do it well, like you consume good products, like safe products, clean products, like also because we all came from a black market, so people living in US or many countries or Canada where now it's in many countries is legalized. We come from black market and we smoked and we consumed some really bad quality weed. So people is going more for the quality than for the quantity. Then depends also in which countries because in the countries where it's still illegal, so the commercial grower take a risk to grow big quantities and then sell. Normally they go more for the quantity over the quality. But the home grower, the basic home growers, it's looking for mainly for the quality than for the quantity. Lately, we have knowledges and technologies that can bring us to produce quite high quantity with high quality. So there is like a good mix on that. So, but definitely, people are really getting a high culture on that, and it's looking for the top quality and clean product. That's really also like in the organic way. They look for really clean products. And that's really good.
I'm the same way where I really strive more for quality versus yield. And back in the day when I first started growing, I was striving for yield. I wanted the biggest plants I can get and
Exactly.
get the most yield that I possibly can, right? But
Absolutely.
me being a small home grower, only growing for myself, and I can gift here legally, I can gift to friends and family and stuff like that. I don't need to grow pounds and pounds and pounds per cycle. I can get away with growing really less than a pound per cycle, and that's still enough for me to consume between when I finish growing and when I complete my next grow. So yeah, I totally understand what you mean. How you saying that mostly home growers are going for that quality side of things because it's kind of easy to get the yield in order to last to you.
Exactly. And that depends also on the genetics, like there are genetics that are really well known to be like low yielding, but it's high quality. But also some genetics can give you bigger yielding. It's still good quality, like top quality. So it depends also on the selection, on how you grow it, where you grow it. So condition, it's almost really, it's really, really important on that. But yeah, quality over quantity. That's a bit the tantra in the last years for sure.
Agreed. Now, you working for Dutch Passion, one of the things you had mentioned kind of behind the scenes as we were exchanging emails is that their genetics are bred in Holland. Can you talk to us about kind of what the climate is there, what those genetics really get put through?
Yeah, yeah, we are. Dutch Passion was just to briefly introduce the company for who don't know them. It's one of the pioneer seed bank, one of the oldest seed bank in the world, still active on producing seeds. Was founded by Henk van Dalen, a biologist from Amsterdam in the 1987. So his breeding project started before the foundation of the company. So he started to travel around in the late 70s in places like Afghanistan, Colombia, Thailand, collecting original landrace seeds from the landrace of that countries. And then coming back to Netherlands and starting, his breeding project, the first experiments, because there were already sold by the coffee shops in the city centers and in the cities of Netherlands, but not so much produced in Netherlands. Main of the product that was sold in the coffee shops around was imported by Thailand. They were the sticky Thai. They were calling like that because the sides of the body were closed in a iron to transport them in the boat. Like charas from India, like some extraction, and also flowers from Afghanistan. So was in South Africa. So he started also with some friends, with a group of friends that are people. Some of them are really well known in the international industry because they started their own project, or breeding, or fertilizers. Anyway, they're still many of them active in the industry. So he started to produce flowers for the coffee shops. He founded a coffee shop that was called Homegrown Fantasy. Homegrown because it was one of the first coffee shop in the city center selling only Dutch flowers, so not imported flowers. And then, like with the knowledge of with the biologist school, like he started to do some testing and breeding, and he became like well known in the first network of Amsterdam. So the other coffee shops started to ask to Hank, like if they can get some seeds, because there were many people in the coffee shop asking for the seeds. So then he realized that could be existing a market about seeds, like so. It started to produce seeds, to reproduce, and to select the first variety. And then I connect to the main topic. This the Dutch varieties. So that varieties arrives from old school land races, crossed and selected outdoor in Netherlands. That's what it means. It means that generation after generation, that plants become stronger to survive and flower in the Dutch weather. The Dutch weather, for who don't know, it's like a really cold weather. It's a short summertime with a lot of hours of lights during the day. But in September, so normally when you in Europe, in this hemisphere, you harvest in the late September, beginning of October. You already have really low temperature, so cold climate with wet climate. So it's really hard to grow outdoor, up there, and it's Netherlands, it's all the Nordic country of Europe, also north of Germany, Danish, like Sweden. So it's all these kind of Nordic countries. So the special create a full family called the Dutch outdoor family that are varieties really vigorous and strong for the extreme outdoor weathers as the Dutch weather. So they are more resistant to the mold for the high temperature, for the high humidity. they can stand more and they can flower really well also in the cold climate. Of course, there is some. It's not going to go to grow strong and well below 0 degrees, for example. But they can really stand on low temperature compared to the south of Europe or other like tropical or subtropical climates. Or inside of this family, there are some of the legendary varieties of Dutch passion, like as a Durban poison. One is worldwide well known as a nice sativa from South Africa, from the Durban city. Freezing Dew, that was at the time was called in the 80s. This variety was called a Purple Star, and that was back crossed with a skunk number one. So it's a Purple Star with a skunk number one. So really old school and strong plant, like also with strange color, with nice color, like purple color in that, pink purple. Then the passion number one, that have a cool story because it's a really fast variety. You can harvest it in 6-7 weeks of flower time. So for outdoor, it's really suitable. And at time was called in our collection was called this variety Amstel Gold. But then Amstel, it's also like a brand of a beer. So the brand of the beer, like call it Hank and say, hey, you cannot call a variety like our beer. So he had to call the name, change the name, and he called it Passion One because it was the first variety developed by Hank in the 80s, and it's still available in our catalog. And then we have Holland Soap, and a really cool variety that I always mention is the Frisian Duck. Was the first project of an outdoor variety, but camouflage. So it's a variety that until the middle flower time you don't see and you don't recognize the plant as because I have this duck foot. So the leaf looks like a duck, only 3 point, and it's like a duck foot leaf, like the sides of the leaf, and it's really cool. It's a cross between Frisian Dew and a duck foot variety, like a mutant. It was the first project of mutant. So that varieties can really stand well in the outdoor growing, in good condition, like with nice weather and nice climate condition, can grow really vigorous, really strong with high yielding, but can really stand well and perform also in a kind of extreme weather, extreme condition.
Yeah, those conditions that you mentioned there seem like it's very taking the place to a rigorous time there, and
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
they're going to be very vigorous growth comes from being bred in those type of conditions. Now, I got to imagine since it's being cold, wet, real high humidity, you mentioned, there's got to be resistance to pathogens like
yeah.
mold, botrytis, powdery mildew. That's got to be what, like your number one thing that you guys look at when it comes to selecting genetics. Is that correct?
Exactly. Also because outdoor growing, like we always say, like it's not a science, like there is many ways, like we always say, like there is 1,000 roads to go to Rome, like there is many ways to grow outdoor, to grow indoor. Like of course, but there are some common fact, some common conditions that to give you the possibility to harvest a nice quality weed and to harvest high quantity also from an outdoor plant. And one of these is choose properly the genetics. Not every genetic is suitable for every climate, especially in the outdoor, because outdoor is not only growing, you are kind of depending a lot on the weather and in your climate, on the condition that you are growing. So this is affect a lot because in the indoor, you can control your climate, you can control the weeks of vegetative stage or flower stage. So you can control almost everything. In the outdoor, you can control till a point. You're depending a lot, on the external conditions, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Outdoor growing is a whole different battlefield compared to indoor growing. That is for sure. I mean, pests is another thing where it's like you have completely different pest prevention methods that you can take indoors versus outdoors. You kind of be a little bit more hands off indoors versus outdoors.
Yeah, it's a good point. This one. It's a good point.
Now you mentioned Holland's Hope, buddy of mine, Pigeons 420. He raves about that strain. He absolutely loves it. Nothing but positive things to say about it. So eventually I think I'm going to get that in my garden. Now, if people are growing in the same climate or they have a similar conditions to that and they are striving after yield, for example, what are some particular strains that you recommend that they grow out?
In the tropical environment, suitable the mostly sativas. We're talking about like Mexico or the jungle in Colombia or Thailand, like close to the Mekong River, for example. Like all these varieties are mostly sativas with long period of flower time and not so compact buds. That's why it's because there is normally high humidity, so it's really wet at the air, and like the mold get inside easier if your bud, your flower, it's super compact. Then you have the mostly, let's say, indica. So we bred some varieties like Mazar and Master Kush, for example, or Night Queen, that are all coming from Afghani. So we are talking about really high temperature, so really warm climate, and normally, especially during the day, dry climate. So these varieties are suitable for like more warmer climate, like but with low, uh, constantly low humidity. That's also something that can help to the grower, to choose the right variety. Then we have really an interesting family that it's called the high altitude varieties that are actually in our catalog are two. It's Pamir Gold and Snowbud. Both of them are bred and produced up to 1,500 meters. So it's for the mountains, for the high altitude. We selected that in the Alps of Switzerland because Netherlands doesn't have high mountains. So we did a project of breeding years ago in the Alps of Switzerland, and we produced these two. We stabilized these two varieties really really strong for the high altitude, the growing. So that's to say that if you grow in the mountain, really up to the mountain, if you don't have certain condition like in Himalaya or in Nepal, like you have certain condition where the sativas, the Indian sativas can grow really well. If you put a strong indica in the mountain, you can harvest that, but it's hardest, like to get a really nice resin. So the Palmy Gold and Snowbud were bred for that. So that's to say that it's not that you cannot give a chance to this variety in not in their in their comfort zone, but it's always better to choose something that it's select for that, especially for outdoor.
And that's something I don't think we talk about enough is, hey, when you're selecting genetics, select genetics that are good for your climate that you live in. You mentioned as an indoor grower, sure, you can control those conditions a little bit more, but it's going to be super beneficial to really do the research and figure out what the background is of those genetics and whether or not it's applicable to where you're currently living. Now, I personally live in Las Vegas, I mentioned
Yeah,
before we started
yeah,
recording, and it's very hot, very dry. And so you have genetics, Dutch Passion has some genetics that are good for this particular climate, right? Can you name off some genetics that are good for those really warm, dry climates?
yeah, absolutely. Like Banana Blaze is one of these. It's a banana Kush cross with Mazar. The Mazar, it's our queen of the indicas varieties, really strong plant. That the name it's also come from a village in Afghanistan called Mazari Sharif, and that plant was land raised there in that area that now it's really hard to get there because there is riots there. There's like a fights between different tribus, like the different oppositions. So Hank was there in the 80s collecting that seeds, and this is a variety that really can stand like really in a desertic, almost desertic, let's say, area. So it's really nice. It's a good plant with a tall leaf, so really really fat leaves, that so it can transform easily the light in the CO2. So doing the photosynthesis, so it's a plant that can stand really well on the high temperature. Then, of course, as I said before, there are some extreme conditions that the plants cannot stand on that. Like if there is 60 degrees and the plants don't see water for for 2 weeks, the plants is gonna die for sure. But on the category and the families of the genetics that we offer, that one's also the Night Queen. It's really nice, and the Master Kush. It's another really nice plant that can stand on this kind of condition. Of course, I want to say something that it's also like it's a point that I think we have to touch, because it's the first phase of the plant. So it's the germination and vegetative stage. This is a phase where the plant can suffer more, because it's quite weak at the beginning. When the root system it's already developed, and you put it in the soil, on the ground, outside, then the plants can be strong and can survive also to some disease or bad condition in the climate. But when the plant is small, normally we always recommend to start germinate and growing, like indoor, or in a small greenhouse, like just to get more control in the first phase of the plant, of the vegetative stage.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I know a lot of folks, they start growing indoors, they'll veg for a certain period of time, and then they'll transition outdoors for the exact reason that you mentioned. Now, how long indoors do you recommend that people veg for before transitioning those plants to outdoors?
Well, that depends a little bit of where and you're going to grow it, and which residue you want to get, like which size of plants you want to get. But normally 1 month at least. What we recommend for a boost, the vegetative stage, and we saw like really consistent, better results and vigorous plants. It's to transplant that. So you germinate, like in a small pot. Then after 3 weeks maximum, you transplant the plant in a 3 liters, 4 liters pot. And then you wait a little bit that the root system start to develop a bit more, and then you can start putting outside the plants. That's something that really can help you to have a stronger plant when you put them outdoor.
That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like the longer the plant has been growing, the more chances it has of survival, right? If you're taking a plant and you have it growing, it sprouts, and you get 7 days, it's a little seedling, and you transfer it to outside, it's going to be a lot less chance that that's going to survive, especially in extreme conditions.
Exactly. You depend on the wind. You depend on the weather. They are like really, really, really weak at the beginning. Like especially. So also, we're not talking just, of course, an LED indoor would be the top notch. Like starting point, but also like a small greenhouse with some control, with some extra light, like simple light, like quite cold light, like 6,000 Kelvin. Like nothing special. Like that without so many watts, like you don't need a super technology LED, but just to get the plants used and to be covered, to be safe, to start the process of growing.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Now, transitioning from the indoors to the outdoors, some folks will do a hardening off process, right? They'll either take their plant indoors, bring it outdoors for a certain period of time, then bring it back indoors, so they'll be going back and forth. Or some folks will take it indoors, put it outdoors, but they'll put it in the shade for a certain period of time versus full sun. What's your process for hardening off plants from going from indoors to outdoors?
Essentially, our best results that we saw, and it's always I'm gonna back that depends on the conditions and the climates, but a temporarily, like putting from indoor to outdoor and then outdoor to indoor, it's better, because then the plants get used. Normally, we recommend to put outside in the middle of the morning till more or less the middle of the afternoon, and then put it back in indoor, to take, especially because we are talking that this phase, it's in the beginning of the springtime. And at the beginning of the springtime, the sun is not too strong. There is like some condition that let you put the plants outside to get used a little bit, and then put inside, so it's not too strong the sun to hide the temperature. So it's a medium climate, and that's help a lot the plant to get used. Then you can do that for 10 days. Then the plants start to get used, and you see that.
Got it. That makes sense. I think one of the big concerns for folks that are growing outdoors, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, at least mentioned it, was pests. When you're taking these plants from indoors to outdoors, one of the things you're exposing to is potentially a lot more pests invading that area that you're growing in and that attacking that plant. What tips do you have for preventing pests or any major infestations if it happens? How do you go about battling these pests?
Well, this is a good question because in indoor you can, as we spoke before, like you can control better, like with your filters from outside, like you have always to be really clean where you work in your station, because spider mites are there at the door, So, and also if you, for example, if you work with clones and you buy clones or you take clones for friends, to be sure to sterilize them, because otherwise you can bring it inside. Outside, mostly, we always say it's better safe than sorry. So it's better to work in advance, and first of all, it's the companion planting, so what it means. So, plant, like put some different kind of plants close to your plants that attract some pests, like spider mites or the whitefly or the thrips, So first thing that this insect do its going on that plants before your attack your medical plants, So that's a first nice preventer. To mention some of them, like coriandolo, it's really good. Something that also in US you can find easily. It's like the marigold plant. I don't know if you know that, but it's marigold. It's really nice for the white fly because attract the white fly. Then the salvia, the lemongrass also. It's really good to attract. And that's already in this way you create like a kind of protection, around your plant. Okay. Then something that we also use quite a lot, and it's considered biologic in the biological growing, is the neem oil. The neem oil sprayed in the vegetative stage create a little bit kind of a layer, on the leaf to protect them. Like it's really nice, not too much. Like we recommend once every 2 weeks as maximum, and never in the flower time. But this is can help also to prevent. And then always talking about organic growing. So biological growing, it's the predators that this you have to use the predator in case it's like not the late move, but you don't need the predators if you don't have the problem, because the predators survive eating the spider mites or like the fly. So if you start seeing like a development on this disease of this like a problem, so you can use the predator. So it's like a biological fight. Normally it's like ladybugs that you can find it in packs of 500, 1,000, and you start to spread these bugs, like around, and they start to as a predator to eat like the spiders or the fly or the thrips in general. So this is the organic way, let's say, the biological way to prevent that or to fight with that. Otherwise, there is always chemical solutions to that, but we never recommend that. Like it's for normally these products is for use and consumption, so we always try to push the people to be as natural as possible.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the same way. Now, training plants, I want to get into that next. This is something that can be drastically differently if you're growing indoors versus outdoors. Narrowing it down to outdoors in particular, what type of plant training do you do?
Depends on the residue you want to get, because there are many different types of outdoor growers. There are outdoor growers that they don't have any problems on the sides of the plants that they're going to grow, or others, because many of our customers, the growers that grow our seeds in the cities, inside the city centers, they use balconies or they use terrace to grow outdoor. So, for a grower that it's in the countryside or can grow big plants, topping and thimming, it's always recommended, because you can boost drastically your healthy, like your harvest quantity of flowers, because topping and thinning are really two nice techniques to get more to boost and power the beside the branches, and then have way more top colas than don't do that. So we really, really recommend that to do that, especially the filming. With a really nice filming, you can get really many, many, many top colas. So that's really useful. For who is growing, like in a balcony, in places where you don't want to attract attention from outside and show that he's growing cannabis in the balconies. Low stress training, LST, is really good because you can train your plant and keep it short, keep it low, so under the radar, let's say of the people. It's also a really good training, training technique to grow outdoor. The scrub also, in the balcony and the LST. That's not bad. Yeah.
I know some outdoor growers, the only training they'll do is I think it's a 45-degree bend
Yeah.
of that main stem.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just those side branches come up and it just grows out to this one big ball of a tree. So that seems to be a common thing that people do.
Yeah, and the first part of the plant, you really see when you turn at 40 degrees, the plant, you really see like a node, like it's say, wow, this plant, it's really powerful. And on that, I want to say that our outdoor varieties are really, enjoyable on that, because you can really try and test, different kind of techniques, because you see that if they have good climates, you see them that are unstoppable. You can grab them and turn, like a little bit and everything, like 40, 50 degrees too, and they keep on growing. They don't stop. Like you know that's really nice from the outdoor. They recover quite quickly from the techniques and the stress. Yeah, like from the cropping too. I like the cropping.
So one question that I wanted to ask you, a little bit of controversy, I guess you could say, it has to do with flowering time and when you actually start counting flowering time. So as an indoor grower, and a lot of my audience are indoor growers, they count flowering days in order to kind of get an idea of when they need to harvest the plant, right? Different varieties have different flowering times. Typically, when they flip that light cycle to either a 12-12 light cycle or 11-13, whatever flowering light cycle they're flipping to, they'll start to count flowering days from there. Now, outdoors, when you're growing outdoors, there is no grow light to turn on to initiate flowering, right? It naturally happens. When do outdoor growers typically start to count flowering days? Is it something that they look at the plant and see flowers start to occur and then they start to count flowering days? Or do they actually look and see sunlight, how much sunlight they're getting per day?
It's a really good question. Like, yeah, as you just mentioned, like when also we write down the characteristic of a genetic of a variety or a new variety. We test indoor, outdoor greenhouse. We have different testing spots, but normally we count the flower time from the indoor, the moment that we turn 12-12. That's what we do, also to put the characteristic, and do analysis on our variety. On outdoor, that changed a bit because the time of reaction of the plants on the changing of the hours of lights depends on the varieties. It's not all the same. We have varieties that already, like like I mentioned one, like freezing dew as an example, or durba poison. Already with 14 hours and a half of lights, they start flowering. And there are others, like Destran, that is a pure sativa, a cross between Trill and Drace sativas, that start flowering in 2 weeks from when the time is 12-12. So the time when it starts, it's really because and the plants already started flowering. Actually, we don't see the pistil, we don't see the pre-flowers, but the plants, it's in pre-flowering. So it's really in the outdoor, it's a little bit more difficult. Normally, personally, I count that from when the first flower hairs, so the first pistils go, are visible on the plants. Then I start counting from that. But it's approximately because depends a lot on the variety. That's for sure.
Got it. Figured I'd ask that one. We've got there's quite a few folks that will debate, particularly as indoors, some people don't actually start counting the flowering days when they flip the light cycle. They wait till they start to see the plant flowering. And then you got the outdoor growers chiming in that say, hey, we don't even have a light cycle to change
Yeah,
over.
no.
So, we just start counting flowering days once we see the plant start flowering. So it seems like there's an ongoing debate and a lot of confusion on who counts it when and so on and so forth. So just want to throw that question at you and see how you
Absolutely.
answer
It's
it.
a nice question. It's also true. Everybody, because between the vegetative stage and the flower time, there is a short period where normally the plants stretch a lot, that it's between 10 days that is pre-flowering. So we should talk about also pre-flowering, because it's not really full flowering, but it's pre-flowering. So it's a middle point between the vegetative stage and the plants. The plants start get used to the change of hours of lights, so they start changing the hormones also and put them, like in the flower stage. So it's a good debate, but I think it's a middle point. Everybody can see a different ways, like in this way. But indoor for us, it's when we turn 12, for our point, and outdoor, you really depends on the genetics and the climate and where you are too.
That makes total sense. So moving along here, the plant has been flowering. Let's just get up towards harvest here. Now there are different varieties that are going to flower for different lengths, like we talked about. But determining when to harvest, I think this is another thing that some folks will have different methods on.
Yeah.
Some will look at the trichomes. Some will look at just the plant, looking at the pistils or stigmas that are there to make sure they change colors. What do you typically look for to determine when to harvest a plant?
Well, it's a good that there are many schools on that, like, and there is many different situations. First of all, in the outdoor growing, you depend a lot on the weather. So always look the weather, try to understand, like we say, okay, my plants, it's full flower. I can keep her a couple of extra weeks, but it's going to get 10 days of rain, like then we always recommend an early harvest. It's better to harvest a bit earlier than keep the plants for 10, 15 days or a full week of full rain or harvest under the rain, because we tried everything, like in Netherlands happen, like the days sometimes have 3 different seasons from the morning to the evening. So you have to get prepared on everything. And so first of all, like look the weather, of course, like you have to see the buds already structured, like give it time to flower. But the weather changing, it's really important. So look at the weather, and then of course, like depends a little bit of the characteristics of the plant. So the sativas, the hybrid, the indicas. Normally, like the second step on the weather is to look at the pistils, so the color. There are, and then also depend on the variety. There are genetics that become 100% on like orange, brown pistils. Like orange bud. It's famous to be like when you harvest it, it's 90% like really orange pistils on that. Uh, or like you get like 60-70% on the colored pistils. And then we have to remember also that when we cut it and when we harvest it, and then we lay, we put it downside in a black environment, in a dark environment. The plant still for a few days have liquids inside, so still to mature a little bit. So the process doesn't end in the day, in the moment that you cut the plants, but it's still going a little bit. So don't be scared, to harvest a little bit earlier than what you expect if the weather is not great. And then the third option, the third way, is to check the trichomes. So if they are transparent or milky or amber, and on that depends also what you want to get as an effect from your plants. Because if people growers look for sativas dominant, normally they look for an euphoric effect, uplifting, energetic effect. Then normally you get this effect with a little bit of early harvest. Like I don't want to say like too early, but a early harvest get you a fresh flowers, a little bit like freshy, tasty, like that. You don't get so much terpenes that you can get with a perfect or a little bit late harvest, but you're gonna get a really uplifting, mainly of the time, uplifting and energetic effect. So what you're looking for is sativa, you know what I mean? Like then you have also a late harvest, you know, like a little bit late when maybe already like 40, 50% of your trichomes are already amber. Maybe you're looking for that because it's like more a body stone, like more a couch, like couch situation where stock, like a more strong effect on the body too, more relaxing, more powerful, like. So it depends also what you're looking for, and that's normally the effect that you're looking for. The indicas dominant, like or the pure indicas, the indicas dominant. So depends also a little bit what you want to get on that, like regarding the effect. I want to mention that because it's not a science on that, but it's quite clear from the test that we get and from the many feedbacks and reports that we have, like that. That's a principal point on the effect too.
I hear you. Yeah, I think a lot of people would say personal preference. I know some folks who, well, me in particular, I like mostly cloudy trichomes with a little sprinkle of amber. I know some people are like, oh, well, I'm looking for about 50% amber because I want more of a laid back couch lock effect.
Exactly.
So, yeah, personal preference. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm also glad you mentioned that the weather as being an indicator on when to harvest because that's something we don't, us indoor growers, we don't really hear about. We don't even
Exactly.
consider because we're indoors. We don't have to worry about the weather. But yeah, when you're outdoors, you have to pay attention to that. I know there's so many growers who have lost harvests because they had rainy days towards the end and then they had bud rot. So if they had harvested a little bit early, they could have avoided that bud rot from infiltrating their plants there. So yeah, really glad you brought up weather as a an indication of when to harvest.
Yeah, it's really a principal point, like also because if you harvest under the rain, then you have to get your products inside, turn down the humidity to take off the water, and then you don't gonna have really good terps on that flowers, like you can still have good products, but it's not gonna be top notch, like product.
Yeah, sounds like a lot more labor too in
Yeah,
order to
exactly,
do that. So
exactly.
okay, well, I want to get back into strains a little bit, and I want to know your personal preference, really. Can you name off the top three strains that you've grown outdoors that you really like?
Yeah, yeah, it's as a really fanatic outdoor grower because I really enjoy the growing outside and give me a lot of happiness at the end of every circle because it's also follow the season time, so when you harvest it, you get in September, October, Europe was always autumn, so more rainy, like, and you have your new flowers, from the harvest. So I really like that. And as I mentioned, I started as a guerrilla grower, so in the middle of the woods, like putting nets to protect them from the animals, and like it was really like not easy to get to harvest the plants. I really love the Skywalker Dutch Passion. It's an old school variety that is a cross between blueberry and mazar. It's a monster plant. It's called like that because the branch, so the top buds, like are really like alpha meter size, like really huge yielding and super fruity, sweet smell come from blueberry. So it's really like a nice combination with a tough and strong effect, like a indica effect. You're like a really catch looking for, at least for me, for the evening. I really enjoy more this kind of effect when I relax myself, when I finish my day. Then I have the Mazar. That is also one of my top three for the outdoor. I enjoy that plant. It's fresh smell and like it's really minty fresh. It's a particular variety. It's really strong to grow, so it's really like it can suffer a lot, but you get something from that, So it's always the rivery, the Mazar. It's also a really nice effect. And the third one is the freeze and dew. That actually I like it, and I still really enjoy that because it's beautiful plants with a beautiful color, a fresh, tasty, like incense taste and smell. So it's like a fruity incense, like it's a good mix of the old school Dutch, like a coffee shop smell, like the flowers. And I really enjoy also the effect because it's an uplifting effect. It's not too strong. We're talking about around 12 and 16% of THC. So we put it in a medium low THC average, and I really enjoy for my daily smoke, like it's enjoyable because I can be super functional with that, like motivate me, focus me when you have to do something that maybe I don't want to do that, or like if I'm too lazy at the moment, like so it's really like uplifting for me. So I would put on the top three these three, and then I many others. To select only three is difficult, but if I were to pick without blind, I would pick these three for sure.
All three of those sound incredible. Now, you mentioned outdoors. The folks that are tuning in that grow indoors, would you recommend it to grow indoors as well, or would you only say outdoors only for those three?
Skywalker and Mazar also indoor, but freeze and dew is not really for indoor. You can grow it indoor, but you can enjoy better indoor varieties growing indoor. You know what I mean? Like it's really a typical outdoor. It's really a good outdoor variety. Like that you enjoy. The maximum point that you enjoy is outdoor or greenhouse, glasshouse. Indoor, I would pick other varieties. Yeah, yeah. But Skywalker and Mazar, you can really enjoy that also in indoor. Yeah, no doubt on that.
Good to know. I actually just got my hands on, well, recently got my hands on Skunk Number One by Dutch Passion, and I haven't grown it out yet, but I got it through Seedsman. I know you guys have a partnership with Seedsman, and yeah, got Skunk Number One. Super excited for that. I mean, that's a iconic,
It's really,
legendary strain
yeah.
there.
And you will see the sides of the bud of that plant. It's unbelievable. I say, wow. Lately we see like really nice genetics, as we said before, but also the size of the buds is decreasing, in general. Like you have super frosty and really nice colors and fantastic flavors and turns, but that old school stuff like skunk number one or the white widow, you see the size of the bud and say, wow, like it's like a tin of Coca-Cola, like it's really like the old one, the fat one, I say, wow, it's it's really, really nice. Yeah.
I can't wait to grow that one out. When I first started growing, my buddy had Skunk Number One, and so I grew out one of his cuts. And I'm curious to see if it's going to be similar to what I grew up back then, because I know there are a bunch of different Skunk Number Ones. Different breeders have their own version of it and stuff like that. But yeah, really looking forward to that. Probably hopefully get that in the ground this year.
Amazing. Now, we're looking forward for your feedback too. Like we hope you enjoy this legendary variety.
So we are getting up towards the end of the episode here, and want to give you a chance to tell listeners how they could find you. And is there anything upcoming in the future that you have going on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, we're working. Like the genetics, like environment and the industry. It's growing fast, and we are studying. Like and testing a lot of new varieties. We breed and stabilize one of the first variety with high content of THCV. It's called a THC Victory. It's really interesting for medical users. We are also testing and study something really interesting that could be another chapter. Like that it's the triploid varieties. That it's still at the beginning of the development, but we see quite a lot of potential on the triploid genetics, and talking about terpenes and quantity of cannabinoids and as a strong plant, like really stable variety. So we're working really hard, like with our breeding team, here in Amsterdam and also with collaboration around the world in different countries. So we really love what's happening with the plants because it's becoming really like a huge international community, always been, but with the legalization and with the technology that is coming in, we are improving a lot of aspect of source of our job, in general. We improving the quality, the testing, and that's also because big, like companies normally was always involved in agricultural industry, the normal one, the corn and all the rest. Now they get interesting and they're putting some technology to us, like to use on the plants testing and analyzing. So we are discovering a lot of potential on using these new technologies. So yeah, you can stay tuned. Like we have a website dedicated also for USA. Like where every week we share blogs, information for any kind of level growers. Like from the beginners till like the pro. Like the breeding process that we use. So you can stay tuned on our website and in our channels, like social channels. So it's we're gonna be in Spanabis this year in the biggest expo of Europe in Barcelona, the Mary Jane in Berlin. Yeah, it's really nice. It's a connection of all the like worldwide connections Spanabis in Barcelona. So we always have a really amazing week all together. Like it's amazing to share a lot of new come on the desks or on the table. So it's really like it's motivating too. Like we feel that we are in the right direction. Like keep on working hard. Like to offer the best genetics, like that we can to the growers, because of course, it's also a mutual trust. You know what I mean? Like when a grower choose for your seed, your genetics, not just like a plant, like growing. It's 4 months, 5 months. It's in time investing, money investing. Like so it's really important for us keep the quality first, and it's what we always do. And we are really happy because we have many growers worldwide, like really happy and giving great feedback. So that's for us the best motivation. And the expo for us is opportunities to get face to face with that people, and combine the works, like create collaborations, and it's amazing what happened.
Yeah, the networking can be so valuable. Dutch Passion Instagram, I'll have that linked in the description section below so the folks tuning in on this can easily get to your social page there. Also want to give a big thanks to the folks that are supporting on Patreon. Patreon.com/Mr. Grow It. 100% of what gets supported through Patreon goes right back into the podcast. You keep this podcast going, so thank you so much. The folks being scrolled on the screen right now are on the producer tier. Special thanks to you. Francisco, once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was awesome. We don't do enough talk about genetics on this podcast. That's something I want to do more often. And so hearing about not only outdoors, which is something we don't talk about much, but outdoor genetics, I think is going to add a lot of value to the folks that are listening into. So thanks so much for your time today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you to having us, and we hope to see you really soon in Amsterdam. You are more than welcome here in the Dutch Patients family.
It's on my bucket list. I'll be out there eventually. Thank you so much, everyone. Peace out. Catch you in the next episode.